What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Hardcore Fab Shop. I am Anthony Bronner, and on today's video, back to work on Old Crow if you haven't figured it out from the intro yet. Now, you guys already got a sneak peek of what we've been doing on this thing this week, so let me just jump right on into the video, and I'll catch you guys up on where we're at. Alright, so I ended up finding another transmission. This is still a 400 turbo, so that's awesome. This one is out of a old, I don't think it was a Winnebago, but some sort of an old motorhome of some sort. So anyways, long story short, it's extremely low miles deal because most of those didn't get drove hardly any at all. So I'm hoping and thinking that this one's probably going to be a good transmission. I didn't actually get a chance to actually drive it or anything, so I really don't know, but it is a pretty clean looking transmission. We've also got a piece back here already for a drive shaft to get started with and everything, so I can use that yoke to get started on a new drive shaft if need be. And I've already popped the pan off of it. Fluid and everything looked really good in there. There wasn't a bunch of metal or anything in it. I've cleaned up the pan. I went ahead and threw a little bit of gray engine paint on there just because. But I think I'm ready to put a gasket on here, get this thing through up there, and pop some of this other stuff off. I need to clean up the cover for that because that cover had a little bit of oil and stuff probably from the motor that this was attached to. So clean that stuff all up and get this thing put back together. We can get it dropped down the truck. Alright, so the motor is back together, and we've got about everything that we can bolt onto the chassis on here. So I think we're at the point where we're ready to put the motor back in here. Give you guys kind of a quick walk around what we got going on. All the front end stuff is back in there, of course, now. I'll have a cleaned up and refreshed steering box, so that's looking pretty good. Got a battery cable up here and a fuel line on that side. I've got some wiring and a brake line on this side. That's all ran back here through the chassis. You see right off the bat that the horns are back in there. They're actually mounted. Got everything all ran back here. Almost connected to the fuel tank. Not quite, but we're almost there. Got the bags back in. Oh, I guess we need to throw the shocks back in it real quick. So probably going to throw the shocks back in here real fast. And then we'll be ready to set the motor back down in here. Alright, so last night Connor and I got the motor and tranny dropped down in there. Now that all that is in there, our next piece that we need to do before we can actually start putting some sheet metal back on this thing is a drive shaft. It's going to be way easier to do that now than it will be later. So I went ahead this morning, I started scrounging up a bunch of parts and pieces, and let me just show you what I got here, and we'll get started making a drive shaft. So before I get started showing you the parts, let me show you what I had to come up with first. So this yoke is actually affixed to the transmission, so it does not slip in or out. So I had to find a drive shaft that would work with that yoke and also the yoke back there in the rear end, but would also have to have a drive shaft slip joint in it. So I couldn't find that actual one, of course, because we've got such a mix match of things here. But what I do have is this piece that came out of our transmission. So we've got one yoke here that has the right U-joint in it for our transmission. So that'll get us started there. I'm going to cut it off the weld right here, ditch that piece of that tube, and I will use that and attach it to this slip joint. So this slip joint has a slip right there in it that you can see, and then that U-joint happens to be the exact same size as the one on the rear end. Now, to make all that work and have it the right length, it would be nice if I could just cut this end off of here and take that other end and put it on there and we'd be good. But I can't because this tube is too short. So the other end of this tube is long enough. That'll get us all the length we need. So now what I'm going to have to do is cut that weld out, the weld out at the other end, have just the tube, and then we'll put that yoke in there, and we'll cut this right here and weld that piece of that yoke in there as well. And in the end, we should have our drive shaft that we need. Alright, so now we got everything all kind of cut down and cleaned up. We're about ready to put this thing together. I went ahead and burnt that cap out, and the other cap, put a new U-joint in there so we can chuck that up in the rear end. That yoke is going to slide on there, and then that will weld on the end of that tube over there. And then this yoke will just weld in the end of that one there. I've already removed the weights off of the tube, so I think we're ready to just start putting this thing all together. Sweet, we got a drive shaft now. I don't know what else we've got left really holding us back from being able to put the body back on this thing, other than the fact that I'd really like to hear this big block run. So I think in our next video, I'm going to be working on that, trying to get that thing to where it will run, and then we can all hear it and see how that sounds, and probably start putting the body on after that. But for today's video, that's all I've got for you guys, so I'll see you next time.